The Sopranos, money is everything.
We are for the money.
Money.
The boss money, just the money.
The money!
Again with the money?
Yeah, again with the money.
There's your money.
Oh, so it's fucking money.
I need money. Money, Arnie.
Yeah, you got money.
Because this is what it's all about, right? Motherfucking cock-sucking money. Here.
In the world of The Sopranos, we learn almost immediately that money is crucial for survival. We learn its importance and the benefits of having large amounts of money with characters like Tony Soprano, Hesh Rabkin, and Carmela Soprano. But just how important is money when it comes to The Sopranos? Before we get started, be sure to click subscribe and click like and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Right away, we can see just how important money is in The Sopranos. As in the series' pilot episode, we are introduced to a flashback of Tony Soprano paying a visit to a deadbeat of one of his gambling rackets by running him over with his car.
Where's my fucking money? Where's the fucking money? I know you'll get the fucking money.
So instantly, we can see that money will serve as a huge importance throughout the series. How does Tony make a living? For starters, there's many ways Tony and his family earn money throughout the series. We learn that Tony's main source of income, as viewed and stated by the IRS, comes from him being in the waste management business, with Tony's job title being a waste management consultant for Barone Sanitation.
What line of work are you in?
Waste management consultant.
I'm in the waste management business. Everybody immediately assumes you're mobbed up.
Dick Barone, who we see occasionally throughout the series, owns the company. However, he pays Tony a hefty salary. This is due to Tony guaranteeing Barone's garbage routes and adding protection along the line. As we find out later in the series, when Barone passes away, that Tony is receiving the second highest salary in the company despite not stepping foot into the office at all.
We're paying an Anthony Soprano second highest salary in the company.
This is because Tony uses violence and potential threats along the way to ensure that Barone's routes won't be given away to rival competition. And if they eventually do, Tony and others would eventually extort the rival garbage companies. Receiving illegal cash from various jobs such as drug trafficking and gambling dens could only get Tony and his crew so far, as this money cannot be used to make legal purchases such as his Cadillac Escalade and his infamous Stugatz yacht. This illegal money first needs to be laundered in order for it to be declared in Tony's tax returns. There's also Tony's businesses that he owns, such as the Bada Bing, Satriale's pork store, and the chicken market that comes up in the later half of season 6. These are legitimate businesses of income for Tony and others. However, these businesses are usually cash-only operations. This is because Tony and others use these cash-only operations to not declare it on their income taxes. In The Sopranos, there is legitimate income and illegitimate income. The income that is legitimate are the businesses that Tony and others have under their name. Of course, this is what I have previously mentioned in the Bada Bing, Barone Sanitation, and Satriale's pork store. The illegal income that Tony and others display throughout the series are the hijackings, the drug trade, the robberies, and the illegal gambling dens. Just like other traditional mafia organizations dipping their hands into the unions, Tony's glorified crew of a family is no different to the New York mafia powerhouses when it comes to controlling the unions, as Tony too has union leaders on his payroll and in his back pocket. Naturally, Tony and others bribe these union officials by threatening to propose a strike or forcing a work stoppage, all to receive their no-show jobs and contracts. To go along with this, Tony and his crew members can also steal high-end materials that are on site to make a profit for themselves. We saw this with the fiber optic cable and floor tiles dispute during the construction site beef between Patsy and Christopher, as of course, this dispute was largely based off money. Tony and his crew also have complete control over the construction workers, the plumbers, joint fitters, etc. So when it comes time to extort, they can do so with ease. But all of this money is not going directly to Tony, as we learn that Tony shares Zellman with New York, which ultimately means they share profits from the Esplanade construction project and other construction projects throughout the series. There's also Tony's loan sharking and gambling loans, as countless members of his crew loan money to friends who cannot afford to go to the bank throughout the series. Ultimately, no one ever winds up paying the mob back. So once these gamblers realize that they will never repay their losses to the Dawn of New Jersey, as violence is more often than not on the receiving end, they ultimately lose significant collateral and they unwillingly fork over their cars, their clubs like we saw with the Crazy Horse, or bust out their sporting goods store like we saw with David Scatino, as the Crazy Horse and sporting goods store become yet another place to launder money for Tony and his crew. Along with this comes Tony's gambling dens, his executive poker games, his bookies, and his sports betting that we would see immensely throughout the series, all find a way to make it up the ladder into Tony's pockets. The character of Hesh also serves as one of Tony's most loyal loan sharks throughout the series, as Hesh is someone Tony depends on for large amounts of money and someone who makes Tony large profits by kicking money out onto the street. Throughout The Sopranos, we've seen many different schemes that Tony and his crew have tried to make a little extra cash on the side, whether it was the HUD scam, performing stock fraud with Robistics, telephone calling cards, hijacked trucks and containers, stealing items such as Italian suits and aged wine from the Vipers, prostitution, drug trafficking, extorting Sal's landscaping company, etc., are all ways Tony and his crew make a living. And this is nothing out of the ordinary, as traditional mafia families involve themselves in similar activities to make profits. We also see Tony and his crew dip their hands into real estate, as this is more focused on Tony, like what we saw with the HUD scam and his business deal with Juliana Skiff to turn the chicken market into a Jamba Juice store. There's also the business of extorting small businesses for protection, also known as shaking down. Essentially, Tony and others extort these small businesses, and in return, the store owner will be protected thanks to Tony's family providing safety. With this comes putting money out on the street, something that we would see with Hesh and with Beansy Gaeta's pizza parlor, as these small businesses would later fork over a cut every week or every month to Tony and his crew. Tony and others wouldn't be financially successful without the relationships that were made possible thanks to money. Whether if it's Jack Masserone, Reverend James Jr., Slava the Russian, Assemblyman Zellman, and Hesh. As without the possibility of making large amounts of money, Tony wouldn't have made friends with any of these individuals, and his pockets would be much lighter as well. Throughout the course of the series, we are witness to Tony making numerous shady business deals with Reverend James, Assemblyman Zellman, and Jack Masserone. And throughout The Sopranos, we've seen Tony launder money in multiple different ways. Whether this is through his HUD scam, the Esplanade construction project, but another way that Tony has laundered money is through his relationship with the Russians. Countless times throughout the series, we see Tony drop off duffel bags full of cash to Slava. Slava will then transfer it into an international account, and with this, we also learn that Tony has money in overseas accounts, but won't give Carmela the serial numbers.
There's money in overseas accounts.
I don't have the serial numbers.
You'll have them when the time comes. Not now. For your own benefit.
So with all of this information, we can see that Tony Soprano and members of his crew have many different ways they can earn and make money. In the pilot episode of Season 4, For All Debts Public and Private, it displays a huge importance towards money, as the season begins after the 9/11 terrorist attacks and the poor economy that resulted in the attacks in the Iraqi war, but also during this time there was the US mortgage housing crisis that took place during the mid-2000s. So we can see that money is slowly beginning to take a toll on everyone as the series progresses.
There's the fucking money. And I don't want to hear about the fucking economy either. I don't want to hear it.
Speaking of earning money, being a good earner is essential for the mafia. When you're a good earner like Ralph and Vito were, it ultimately means more jobs and more money coming your way. Despite all of their flaws, Tony trusted these two as they brought in large amounts of money for Tony. So much money that Tony even considered bringing Vito back after he left because of how good of an earner he was. If you're an earner, you don't essentially keep all the profits that you make from a score. It's a ladder, and eventually the money will make its way up to the boss of the family. A cut will go to your captain who you work for, and then you will kick up to the boss and underboss of the family. This is how high-ranking members within a family stay so wealthy, because they're ultimately getting a cut of everyone's score. Whether it's a robbery, hijacking, or a stock scam, it all gets divided throughout the family.
What do you think his commission will be?
2-3 grand, 10 to Junior. We're lucky we net $500 from the whole thing.
Money is everything when it comes to The Sopranos, as we know. It serves as a strong purpose and is the backbone for Tony and others when it comes to them making a living and profits. It provides intimidating factors for Tony, and it's also how Tony and others make connections. Of course, when it comes to money, there are pros and cons. The pros are money makes Tony and others extremely wealthy, as we know. It provides Tony with relationships that benefit him financially, but the factor of money also supports his lavish lifestyle. As without money, Tony wouldn't have his Rolex watches, his imported cigars, his luxury cars, and yacht. But not only does money support his lifestyle, the factor of money supports his wife Carmela's lifestyle as well. To Carmela, money is just as important to her as it is to the mafia. It provides her with the luxurious jewelry, the designer clothes, the cars, and furniture that all resides inside her mini mansion. While she contradicts herself constantly throughout the series about her husband's line of work and how the money he provides for her and her family is essentially blood money, she can't get away from the fact that she adores the high risk, high reward of her husband's profession, as she knows exactly what is behind closed doors, that her husband is a murderer, sociopath, and ultimately an evil human being.
Allowing what I know is evil in my house. Wanted money in my hands, money to buy anything I ever wanted.
Carmela has a love-hate relationship with her husband, but also with money. She doesn't want to wind up being poor or a widow, but she also loves the glitz and the glamour that money provides for her. Money and her husband ultimately provide Carmela with the spec house of her dreams, as this is something she feels that will support her future if something were to happen to Tony. But we all know this was Tony's doing who made it possible. But with money, there's also plenty of cons. Oftentimes, when it comes to money, there is usually greed involved. Throughout The Sopranos, the presence of greed clashing with money is presented numerous times, as this is evident with the numerous beefs that we see throughout the series. Whether it was the conflicts that Tony had with Ralph and Richie April, the beef between Christopher and Tony Blundetto, and the numerous beefs that Paulie had with either Ralph, Christopher, and Feech LaManna, as all of these conflicts are brought upon as a result of money. Along with this, we saw the infamous battle between Tony and Carmela in the bird feeder situation, as Carmela secretly stole $40,000 from Tony's bird feeder in the backyard and invested it into the stock market. Money makes people do drastic, desperate, and selfish things. Whether it's Janice stealing Svetlana's prosthetic leg in return for trying to receive valuable records, Paulie suffocating his mother's friend to death, or even AJ's wannabe gangster friends pouring acid on a kid's toes to finally get their money, as we see the cons of money come to life a few times throughout the series. The first is during the 10th episode of Season 2, Bust Out, when Tony busts out his childhood friend in David Scatino, after Scatino borrowed money from Tony to play in his executive poker game. When Scatino fails to repay Tony, however, Tony takes matters into his own hands and completely throws away their childhood friendship and relationship. He does so by taking collateral with his son's Jeep and sporting goods store, as his gambling addiction ultimately costed him his business, his family, and his son's college funds. We also see a similar situation take place in the 6th episode of Season 4, Everybody Hurts, when Artie mistakenly falls for a fraudulent business deal with Jean-Philippe, where we watch Philippe steal Artie's $50,000 that later results in Artie trying to commit suicide. But nowhere do we see money be such an important factor throughout an episode than during the 16th episode of Season 6, Chasing It. as this episode revolves around Tony and his gambling addiction, as throughout the episode and the second half of season 6, Tony finds himself losing millions of dollars via gambling and chasing his next big win. While certainly the basics for survival in the Mafia usually revolve around traits such as toughness, street smarts, credibility, selfishness, and greed, but money is also an important factor when it comes to survival. A mafioso needs money just as much, if not more, than these other traits to survive. Money is a way that a mafioso can buy his way out of a situation. He can use money for intimidation, can use money to make other lucrative business deals, and can use money to take out a rival member of a family or someone that stands in their way of getting bumped up or made. We saw this with the scenario of Ralph and Johnny Sacrimoni almost getting whacked by hitmen, as both the hitmen were offered large amounts of money for the lives of Ralph and John. While The Sopranos is a fictional television series, Tony Soprano and members of his crew portray the groundwork in which an organized crime family can operate and make millions of dollars. As throughout The Sopranos, we see the pros, cons, and ultimately the importance of money when it comes to the mafia life. Ultimately, money is everything when it comes to the mafia and when it comes to The Sopranos. It's a way for Tony Soprano and other members of his crew to make millions of dollars by extorting unions and its officials by having them in their back pocket. Money is how Tony Soprano makes a living, whether if it's using this money to place bets in an executive poker game or using the money as an intimidation factor towards his debt collectors. Money is used to buy his expensive yacht, gifts for his wife, and jewelry for his girlfriends. But at the very end of The Sopranos, no one can deny the importance of money. Whether Tony is making it legally or illegally, money is everything when it comes to The Sopranos. What are your thoughts about the importance of money? Let me know down in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to click like and subscribe, and for more Sopranos content, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.